Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Tuesday, April the 17th, 2018 convening of the Baltimore City Board of Municipal and Zoning Appeals. A couple of house rules before we get underway. First, if you have a cell phone, a pager, anything that makes any sort of audible, electronically generated sound, plays a ringtone, a chime, a beep, etc. We ask at a minimum that you please turn those devices to a vibrate only, if not off position. Similarly, to the extent that you need to have a conversation with someone, we ask that you please take those conversations out the double doors to your rear. And the reason for those rules is pretty simple and straightforward. There are a number of microphones which are arrayed around us up here, and those microphones are all very sensitive. They are live, as you can tell. They're not just for the purpose of amplification, but they're also for the purpose of recording these proceedings and conversations, cell phones, other devices, etc., going off in the gallery, and any conversations going on in the gallery. Don't just interrupt the general conduct of these proceedings, but also interfere with the recording of these proceedings. Similarly, those of you who are sitting forward of the wall, if you turn around, you can see that there are 1, 2, 3 video cameras which are mounted on the wall up there behind you. And there are 1, 2 video cameras which are mounted on the wall up here behind us. Those video cameras are live and they're on. They are broadcasting these proceedings live on the website for the city's cable access channel, as well as recording them for, I guess, tape delay broadcast on the city's cable access network, as well as storing them for all posterity for the city's YouTube channel. So cell phones, pagers, conversations, the like, etc., interrupt and interfere with that process as well. Voting. We will be voting at the end of the day on all the cases which we hear today, and you're certainly more than welcome to hang around and enjoy a civics lesson if you so choose, but if you have other things to do on this rather frigid mid-April afternoon, that's certainly understandable, and you can call into the zoning board office in the morning and find out how we ruled in your case. If you take out pen and paper, I'll read the number off the zoning board a couple of times, and that number is 410-396-4301. Again, 410-396-4301. You will, however, need to wait until you receive the formal written notice of the outcome of your case, which should be forthcoming in about 3 to 4 weeks, before you will be able to obtain your permit. We certainly ask that you please not build in the city of Baltimore without first obtaining all of your necessary permits and authorizations. If you haven't already done so, if you're here in opposition to any case today, we ask that you please sign in on our sign-in sheet being held up now by Mr. French. The sign-in sheet allows us generally to know which cases have opposition. Also allows us to know who needs to receive those aforementioned written notices I was just talking about. So if you're here in opposition to a case and you want to make sure that you're notified of any developments in the case, including the ultimate disposition of the case, we ask that you please sign in on our sign-in sheet. In addition, there are a couple of cases, actually we have a few cases which have been postponed, and those cases won't be going forward today. We may have others as well as the docket goes on. So if you want to be notified for when those cases do get heard, you have to make sure that you've signed in so that we have all of your information and we can contact you for when those cases will be going forward. We'll generally be hearing cases today in the order in which they appear on our docket, after we first dispense with some preliminary issues. First, as I mentioned, there are some cases today which are being postponed. These cases will not be going forward today. 2018-30, 100 through 116 Dolphin Street. That case has been postponed until May 29th at 3 p.m. Next case that's postponed is 2018-72, 1401 through 1407 Woodall Street and 1446 Stevenson Street. That case has been postponed. There is no currently set rescheduled date. In addition, we have 2018-76, 1780 Union Avenue. That case has been postponed as well. So if you hear in connection with those cases, they won't be heard today. They've been postponed. Please make sure that you've signed in on the signing sheet so we can let you know when they will be going forward, but they will not be going forward today. Next up are the cases on our consent agenda, and the consent agenda consists of cases where the zoning board staff has reviewed the files and the board has been able to determine that we are able to approve these appeals on a consent basis based upon the information which is contained in the record thus far. I'm going to call all the consent cases together as a group, and as the cases are read off, you'll come forward. The first person will line up right here. Everyone else will line up in the order in which they're called down the dais. Once everyone is up here, we'll get you all sworn in together, and then we'll call each case in turn, and as we do, you'll be given the opportunity at that time to offer any information you would like to have added to the record. All right, first case on our consent agenda is 2018-7, 2205 Cross Country Boulevard, Lee Giroux. After that, we'll get 2018-69, 743 South Montford Avenue, David Wilkins. After that, we'll have 2018-70, 1108 Scott Street, Baltimore City Import. All right. Next up is 2018-74, 2401 through 2409 Linden Avenue, Elisa Hertzmark. After that will be 2018-82, 1411 Olive Street, Adam Carballo. After that will be 2018-83, 2214 Canary Street, as well as 2018-84, 917 Bayless Street, also Adam Carballo. Then will be 2018-89, 2104 East Pratt Street, Alex Gertzmeyer. And finally, 2018-90, 1472 Reynolds Street, Glenn Boland Peterson. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, calling the first case, 2018-7, 2205 Cross Country Boulevard, Lee Giroux.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon, afternoon, Ms. Giroux. We have this as an application to construct a first-story side addition with porch and deck at this location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Mr. French, anything on behalf of the Planning Department?
Martin French for the Baltimore City Planning Department. Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. French. And Ms. Giroux, is there anything you would like to have added to the record at this time?
No, we contacted the community association, which was Cross Country Community Association, and I just checked the file, and they actually did send the 3 letters of support from the neighbors. And Mount Washington had no input at this location.
Okay. Do you want to introduce your guest?
This is the owner.
Afternoon, ma'am. Your name?
Mrs. Kathleen Peterson-Baum.
Welcome. All right. If that's it.
That's all.
The zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there was sufficient information to approve your appeal. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Next, 2018-69, 743 South Montford Avenue, David Wheelcatch.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to use the premises as 3 dwelling units. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department reviewed this application and has no objection. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Wilketch, anything further you'd like to have added to the record at this time?
No. Spoke to associations and got support from everyone and the councilman's office as well, so I think we're in good shape.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal. Good luck.
Have a good one.
Next, 2018-70, 1108 Scott Street, Baltimore City Import.
Afternoon.
Afternoon, sir. Would you state your name for the record?
Troy Wilson?
All right. Mr. Wilson, you're here on behalf of the applicant, Baltimore City Import.
Yes, sir.
All right. Mr. Wilson, we have this as an application to use the first floor as an office for wine import with storage in basement. Is that correct?
That is.
All right. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed the application, noted that this property is located within the Washington Village Urban Renewal Plan area. Because of that, the department recommends approval of this application be subject to the condition that the approved use complies with all requirements for neighborhood commercial establishments provided in the zoning code and with the design and rehabilitation standards of the Washington Village Urban Renewal Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Wilson, are those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
They are.
All right. Anything further at this time?
I'd like to say that I got a letter from Washington Village, also known as Citizens of Big Town. I got a letter of support, of unanimous support from them in this request. And also that just in the letter, the state's going to require that I get a letter from the zoning, which is why I'm here, saying that I can store wine on the premise.
Okay. Is that it?
That's all.
Okay. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal. Good luck.
Thank you.
Next, 2018-74, 2401 through 2409 Linden Avenue, Lisa Hertzmark.
Hi.
Afternoon, Ms. Hertzmark. We have this as an application to consolidate lots and construct a two-story addition with outdoor fenced play space to existing community center. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
All right. Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is contained within an urban renewal area, the Reservoir Hill Urban Renewal Area. There are certain provisions of the plan which limit height of new construction and do not explicitly authorize the existing and proposed use, but these provisions can be waived by the Commissioner of Housing and Community Development. The Commissioner approved this waiver on March 16th of this year. On that basis, the Department of Planning recommends approval of the application, subject to the condition that the enlarged community center and grounds are completed in accordance with plans approved by the Department of Planning, as consistent with the Urban Renewal Plan, waiver granted by the Commissioner of Housing and Community Development. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Hertzmark, are those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
Yes,
Okay, anything further at this time?
not at this time.
Okay, zoning board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank
Good luck to
you.
you. Next, 2018-82, 1411 Olive Street, Adam Carballo.
Hello.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to construct a second floor rear addition and new third floor with rooftop decks at this location. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. French, anything on behalf of the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Carballo, anything further that you would like to add to supplement the record in this appeal?
No, sir.
Okay. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
You got two more here. We'll zip through those. 2018-83, 2214 Canary Street. We have that as a application to reconstruct and expand a two-story rear addition with 2-foot overhang into public right-of-way. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Carballo, anything further you would like to have added to the record in this case?
Yes, I'd like to add, I have 9 letters of support from adjoining property owners.
Okay, I'll pass those up. Anything further?
No, sir.
Okay. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal. Last, you've got 2018-84 917 Bayless Street. We have that as an application to construct a 2-story rear addition at that location. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Carballo, anything further you'd like to add to the record in this case?
No, sir.
Zoning Board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you.
Good luck. Next up, 2018-89, 2104 East Pratt Street, Alex Gertzmeyer.
That's me.
Afternoon, sir. We have this as an application to construct a two-story rear addition at this location. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
All right. And Mr. Gertzmeyer, anything further you would like to have added to the record in this case?
The property is being renovated under CHAP guidelines to restore the historic value of the property.
Okay. Anything further?
No.
All right. Zoning Board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve your appeal.
Thank you, sir.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Next, 2018-90, 1472 Reynolds Street, Glenn Boland Peterson.
Correct.
Afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
We have this as an application to construct a second-floor rear addition at this location. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. French, anything for the planning department?
Planning Department has no comment on this application. Thank you.
Okay. And Mr. Boland Peterson, anything further you would like to have added to the record in your case?
Nothing at all, sir.
Zoning Board staff, having previously reviewed your application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve the appeal.
Thank you.
Good luck. All right. Next, we will address the remainder of our docket, which will include cases where opposition is signed in. And frequently we find that opposition is a result of either a lack of communication or miscommunication among the parties. Frequently, it can be useful to offer the parties an opportunity to enter into a dialogue between themselves to see if they can resolve whatever differences they have. Obviously, if there are two sides who are engaged in a dispute and they ask the board to resolve their dispute, one of those two sides is bound to go away disappointed with the result. So this is your opportunity to avoid that unhappy outcome. I'm going to call all the cases where opposition is signed in, and you can just stand where you are. We'll ask if there has been discussion among the parties, and whether or not the parties think that further dialogue or having a dialogue at this point will be fruitful. We're certainly not obligated to take the opportunity to speak with one another, but we certainly do encourage and appreciate it. First group of cases we have are all concerning 6500 St. Helena Avenue. That's 2017-45, 2018-4, and 2018-25. It's the Hanger LLC and Becky Witt. Folks, has there been dialogue between the parties?
Still a little bit of dialogue, yeah.
Okay, any desire to continue dialogue? Or okay. Would you?
Not on our side, I think. We'll take a couple minutes.
Okay, I was gonna say, since you guys looks like there was a few issues that are going on in your case, it's likely gonna be a fairly lengthy one. I'm gonna slide you guys to the back of the docket, so you'll certainly have time, and hopefully you can make it productive. Okay? All right. Next, 2018-71, 24 East Madison Street, Marvin Thompson. Okay, and who signed in that case?
Looks like the applicant, I think mistakenly checked the against box when you are in fact the applicant.
I probably thought I said appellate.
Not a problem. I'm just going to mark that out, sir, if that's all right with you.
Okay.
Other than that, that's it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Sir, you were on the consent docket, so once I go through, I'll just call you up so we can get you out of here, okay? Just have a seat for a moment. 2018-73, 1118 Leadenhall Street, Joseph Woolman. I think I saw them go outside. And I think that is it. Okay. Mr. Thompson, why don't you come forward, please? Okay, sir, if you would raise your right hand to be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes.
All right. Sir, for the record, you are Marvin Thompson?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Thompson, we have this as an application to use the property, use the rear building, or the rear portion of the building known as 802 St. Paul Street as a barber shop. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right. Mr. French, anything on behalf of the planning department?
Yes, thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is within the Mount Vernon Historic District. This property is one of the contributing structures to that particular district. The department is recommending approval of this application be subject to the condition that all exterior changes, including additions, demolitions, alterations, and new or replacement signage, are completed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical and Architectural Preservation. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Thompson, are those conditions stated by the planning department acceptable to you?
Yeah, there's no plans to do any alterations to the property.
Okay. Anything further you would like to have added to the record at this time?
No.
All right. Zoning board staff, having previously reviewed the application, we have determined that there is sufficient information to approve review. Good luck to you.
Yep.
Okay. Calling the first case, we're going to jump all the way to the back. 2018-88, 3907 Falls Road, Leah Heisey. Come on up. All right, ma'am, we have this as an application to construct a vestibule in front of buildings. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, if all those intending to give testimony in this case can raise their right hands to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Do we have any staff reports?
Planning Department reviewed this application and has no comment. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Heisey, by the way, am I pronouncing that last
It's
name?
Heiss.
Heiss, okay. Ms. Heiss, why don't you tell us about what it is you're proposing here?
Sure. What we are proposing is erecting a vestibule over an existing ramp that goes up to our property. And in order to do, we're doing that so that we can protect our patients from the rain and that we also can provide an extra access point for security for this operation, which is going to be a dispensary.
Okay.
And we have bigger pictures if you want bigger pictures.
I've got some aerials here. I'm just trying to get the layout. Okay. Looks like it's just gonna sort of project out from the front with another set of glass doors.
Yep.
So all you're doing is covering that ramp that runs the same way as Falls Road?
Right. We will rebuild the ramp, of course, because it needs to be
Not
rebuilt.
expand beyond it, not any bigger?
No more, we won't impede any traffic on the sidewalk or anything like that.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you both.
Great, thank you.
Since they're outside, 2018-44, 1805 St. Paul Street, Huygen Mar. All right, sir, we have this as a application to use the premises for 5 dwelling units. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
All right. Please raise your right hand to be sworn.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, do we have staff reports?
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that this property is within a Charles North Urban Renewal Plan area, and specifically that there are requirements for conversion in this area, which this property would not meet without a variance. The department, based upon the issue of the variance amount, is willing to accept 4 dwelling units being approved, 1 per floor for the existing building, including the basement, subject to the condition that all exterior renovations and alterations, including window or exterior door replacement if done, are completed in accordance with an authorization to proceed issued by the Commission for Historical Architectural Preservation. This is because this particular urban renewal plan requires this particular action. It is the only urban renewal plan in Baltimore City that does. The department recommends disapproval of 5 dwelling units because the number, amount, and proportion of floor area variances needed for conversion approval would be excessive. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Mr. Morrow, do you understand everything that Mr. French just said on behalf of the planning department?
I do, sir.
Okay. So are you willing to reduce your request to 4 units? Being based upon the planning department's enforcement of urban renewal plans is in their jurisdiction, and so based upon their understanding of the requirements of the applicable urban renewal ordinance, you're only allowed 4 dwelling units given the FAR.
I understand it perfectly, sir. The reason why my day job, I'm an architect working with national developers, multifamily for the last 16 years. I'm working on projects very similar to 1 Light Street or 14 Light, and I've been a Baltimore City resident for the last, 18 years.
Mm-hmm.
I know how difficult it is for the common man to live in those apartment units, and I'm not a builder, I'm not a developer, and my goal was to bring that level of design and quality of construction and provide it for everyone, make it accessible to everyone, and that's how I came up with the 4 units. If you look at the unit plans, you'll see that they're spacious units, very thoughtfully designed, and if I do 4 units, yeah, I can do 4 units, but it'll have to be, the cost will have to be passed on to the city residents. Like, I'm okay with 4 units, but I think as a good Samaritan that I'm trying to be, that's why I proposed 5.
Mm-hmm.
I can easily go back to 4, but for me the cost will be less, but to live there, people's cost will increase.
Yeah,
So,
and that certainly is a unfortunate side effect of these kinds of regulations. Nonetheless, it's the applicable regulation for this portion of the city.
I understand it, sir.
Do you want to walk us through what you're proposing?
So I'm proposing 5 units. There's just 1 2-bedroom unit, which I think is in line with the current understanding of national developers as well. Nelson Cole, which just opened, has 103 units with only 7 2-bedrooms. Rest of them are 1-bedrooms or studios. I think that is a result of the economic study and what people can afford and who will actually live in the community. That's my goal too. And the new zoning regulation, which was adopted in June, right? Before, if I was able to submit it June 1st, I would have been approved to put in 8, 9 units instead of just 4, because it was 200 square feet per dwelling unit back then. And a lot of the projects that I've seen have gone through that almost in a rushed manner before this zoning is changed. Now, I'm not saying that it's not changing for the better, but there's, in my opinion, there should always be an exception to the rule, or should be viewed case by case. So I think I submitted the plan, so if you look at the plans, in my opinion, you'll recognize that they're thoughtfully designed and spacious. I don't, in the current economics from, say, towns like Orlando to Atlanta to New Jersey to DC, we don't see 1,000 square feet for 2 bedrooms anymore, or 750 square feet for 1 bedrooms. You'll see there's 600 plus square feet for 1 bedroom, and they have their spacious bathrooms and walk-in closets. That's all you need if you design it smartly. I've been doing it for a long time to understand the architecture of multifamily dwellings, and like I said, I'm not a developer, I'm just doing it to make an impact in my city. So if it's for you, and I've already submitted my application for CHAP, it's not my intention to alter the facade in any way or shape that would be against my code of ethics as well. So that's all I can say, really. And I have met with the community association. I don't know if they were able to reach out to you, but they were super enthusiastic about the project.
Do we have anything? No. Okay. Yeah, we haven't received anything from them. At least not formally, anyway.
Sure.
All right. Any other questions?
Are there any other buildings in that block that have over 4 units?
1729 is one I know that has 5 units. That I think that got approved under the previous zoning regulations in June at some point.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Really? Okay. 2018-73, 1118 Leaden Hall. Mr. Woolman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Nice to see you, Mr. Cunningham. There were a couple folks that signed in opposition to the matter, and I've had some conversation with those folks outside, including Ms. Thomas, who's standing to my left. This is an unusual application, and we're happy to take more time to better educate the neighbors that have some concerns regarding the application. So for that reason, we've requested the matter be postponed.
Okay. And ma'am, can you identify yourself for the record?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Betty Bland Thomas.
Afternoon, ma'am. You've been in discussions with Mr. Woolman regarding this case?
Yeah, just moments ago, and we have lots of questions as well as concerns.
Okay. And Mr. Woolman has requested a postponement of the case. Are you in agreement with postponement?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then. 2018-73, 1118 Leadenhall Street is postponed.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You know how to reschedule, so, all right. Skipping down to 2018-78, 500 through 508 West Franklin Street, Tamika Bing. Okay, calling again 2018-78, 500 through 508 West Franklin Street, Tamika Bing. Let's try this one. 2018-79, 2600 Guilford Avenue, Jeff and Beth Larry. How are you? Afternoon, sir. State your name for the record.
Jeff Larry.
All right, and Mr. Larry, we have this as an application to use garage in rear as a guest cottage. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands to be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, and do we have staff reports?
Yes, first we have a letter from the Charles Village Civic Association written on April 12th. The association supports the appellant's request to use the garage at the rear of their owner-occupied property at the corner of 2600 Guilford Avenue and East 26th Street as a guest cottage. The property owner presented schematic drawings for converting his brick garage at the corner of Hunter Alley and East 26th Street into a guest cottage featuring new windows and doors, a sleeping living space, full bathroom, and kitchenette. The guest cottage will replace an existing guest bedroom in the main house and allow for the two children ages 9 and 6 who currently share a bedroom in the main house to have their own bedrooms. On-street parking along East 26th Street is readily available. The association is pleased with this attractive new use of a garage as a guest house cottage, which supports the quality of life for families living in Charles Village. We urge your strong support. Thank you. And there's planning's report.
Thank you. Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that because this property is zoned R6, a conversion would not necessarily be authorized. This particular property last had a use and occupancy permit for multiple family dwelling, for 2 dwelling units. So the practical effect physically of this application is to convert the larger row house, the end of row house, to a single family dwelling and then establish another dwelling unit at the rear of the property in what was previously the garage. On that basis, provided that the dwelling itself is a single family dwelling, the Department of Planning has no objection to this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Larry, why don't you tell us about what's being proposed here?
So right now, we have 3 bedrooms on the second floor of the main house. I have 2 children, ages 6 and 9. They share the middle bedroom, and the back bedroom has always been used for a guest room. We have quite a few family and friends that come and stay with us, but my 9-year-old daughter is about done sharing a room with her 6-year-old brother, so we are going to lose the guest room. And my wife and I had the idea of turning this garage into a guest cottage. Right now it's just being used as storage for my architectural salvage and lumber, a better use of the property. We've been in the house 10 years this month. We're pretty active in the community. We love the neighborhood, and we want to stay in the neighborhood, and we just want to come up with a better use for the resources we have on the property.
So you've got the word kitchen written in here. Are you envisioning a full kitchen in this?
A kitchenette, so a sink, a small refrigerator, microwave, or something like that.
Okay. Would this be still usable to you if you did this without a kitchenette?
We could probably do it without a kitchenette. We were just thinking, so for instance, my in-laws, my wife's parents, possibly mine, when they come to visit, if they want to have their own space and have a sink and a microwave to make coffee or something in the morning, we're not interested in putting a stove in there or something like that, but at the very least a sink and a small refrigerator or something like that.
No thoughts of using this as an Airbnb type of?
I can tell you absolutely positively that we have no thoughts of using this as a rental apartment. We are going to possibly look into using it as an Airbnb occasionally, if it can help offset the cost of it. Frankly, the idea of having strangers in our backyard is a little creepy to me, but I want to be straightforward and say it is something that we may look into. But we are not doing this to go into the business of being landlords or Airbnb runners. We need the guest space, and that's our primary reason for doing this.
Thank you.
French, I think, did you mention that this was currently listed as a two-bedroom?
According to the information that came up,
I mean, a two-unit, I'm sorry.
it shows up as a multifamily dwelling, 2600 Guilford. Now, that's not to say that's what the property is being used for. Apparently, there's never been a single-family use and occupancy permit
Yeah, we
Yeah.
got the house
notation
10
made
years
in the
ago.
system.
It's always been a single family for us. It has, I can see that it must have been because there are 2 electric meters in it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
probably
since we
wasn't,
bought the
somebody just
house.
didn't convert it back to a single family on the city's records.
Right.
Any other questions?
Excuse me, what association sent a letter in?
Charles Village Civic Association.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next, 2018-81, 3131 East Monument Street, Michael Miller. Afternoon.
How's everybody?
Good. How are you?
All right.
All right, sir, you're Mr. Miller?
Yes.
All right. And Mr. Miller, we have this as an application to use the first floor at this location as a cafe and the second floor as offices. Is that correct?
Yes.
If you can raise your right hand to be sworn, please.
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
All right. Do we have staff reports?
Yes, Planning Department has reviewed this application and recommends approval, subject to the condition that the uses of the property continue to meet requirements and standards for neighborhood commercial establishments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, sir, are those conditions stated by the Planning Department acceptable to you?
Yes.
And why don't you tell us what you've got planned here?
When we purchased the property, we wanted it was zoned also for commercial, and they changed it like June. But we working on, we rehab properties also.
Okay.
So when we got the word that they had zoned it R8, we just said, let's go do the paperwork. But we want to do a cafe, and we were also in the midst of trying to find an office for our company. And we like, well, upstairs is 3 offices. Why not, use our own space as office space? And that way it'd be like a dual purpose. But downstairs would be a full cafe, and it's like pretty much set up like that already. It has a delivery door, has the off corner door, and then it has another door on all the way to the back. It has a storage garage. It has a I don't know what you call them, but it's like an access for deliveries in the basement, right on the side of the building. So it's 4 delivery doors, right on the side of the building. Well, 3. Yeah, 3. And everybody that we spoke in the neighborhood spoke to, including the bar right next door, like everybody loves the idea. It's a different concept than just the standard carry out. You know, something a little different, a different look, because everything is changing in that area. Also have other drawings that they told me to bring. I don't know if you guys wanted to look at them.
Let me see what we have. We've got these 2 drawings.
Yeah, see, they just have the, like the...
It looks like it's just
Yeah,
sort of colored
pretty
in
much.
darker.
Yeah.
All right, now the photos I see, it looks like there is or there was a grocery that was in there.
Yeah. The last use was a grocery store, but because there's a vacancy violation on it. And when we speak to the inspector, what we're told is at one point they used it for food,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't legal.
Oh, okay.
And then they use it as a grocery store,
Mhm.
because the landlord or the previous owner, when we purchased the property, she said we just finished the lease on it, but the inspector said, well, it's been vacant for over a year. And I said, no, the landlord still has a lease. And she said, yeah, the lease doesn't make it legal.
Yeah.
So you have to go through your formalities to, to do it. But when you look inside, it's set up exactly for like a restaurant.
Okay, so what kind of cafe would you be operating?
Like breakfast, coffee. We want to do like a seafood, type of thing. Not traditional, not a carry out. Like this is more upscale.
Okay.
Yeah. Like the whole look of it, like the whole open glass window in the front, which is still there. We already looked at signage that go right on the glass. Just all higher end food than you see in that neighborhood. The only thing you can get from the top of Monument Street to the bottom of Monument Street is, like the same thing over and over every corner. So we just trying to change the look of what food looks like, to the average person that's just driving through. Like once you leave past that part, you start seeing like regular places that you can go sit down and have a bite to eat. So, something with some internet, so, good coffee, a good breakfast, a great lunch, somewhere you probably can come sit down and have a little meeting. Because we do it all the time. We stop at Panera Bread or somewhere and just sit down, have a bite to eat, have a little meeting. We just want to mimic that same feel. It's more of a feel thing because food, we know food. We foodies, so yeah. So it's more of a feel, and everybody that we talk to in the surrounding neighborhoods, they say it's a great idea. So, and we've done a lot of work in the neighborhood. As far as rehabbing homes, we own rental properties in the neighborhood. We've rehabbed and sold, like, because the properties' values are going up. Like, we've actually renovated and sold properties in the neighborhood. We just purchased more properties in the neighborhood to rehab. We own an assisted living facility in the neighborhood. As well as rental properties again. So it's a great neighborhood. We just want to add something to it. Everybody that's in that general area knows us. Either somebody in their family has rented from us, their mother might have stayed at our assisted living facility. Like everybody kind of knows us for doing, something positive. So this just part two of, what we trying to do in the neighborhood.
Okay. Any questions?
Do you live in the neighborhood?
Yes. Actually, the assisted living facility, I stay there and help with the people. We take in a lot of people with dementia, schizophrenia, and so I stay there most of the time. We have a live-in that we house a live-in with her child and her fiance in the basement, which they own living quarters, and then we take care of the people that's there.
Okay. What was your hours of operation, Bay?
Of the cafe, we're still trying to decide, like, as far as we know that route is a lot of delivery people. So, I know a big thing because me and my partner met, like, welding. And we're early morning people. So we know coffee is like, people will stop where good coffee is. So we trying to figure out the hours, maybe open somewhere in that 7 to 8. We still trying to figure it out. It's not etched in stone yet. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. But we want to be able to facilitate the people that you see on the bus stops in the morning, have another option for them to have something good to eat, good cup of coffee, and send them on their day. Yeah.
All right.
No, thank you.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
2018-87, 1607 Lauren Street, 1609 Lauren Street, Sue Ali. Good afternoon, ma'am. All right, ma'am, we have this as an application to consolidate 1607 and 1609 Lauren Street, and to use 1607 Lauren Street for accessory storage to tavern at 1609 Lauren Street. Is that correct?
So,
All right. Ma'am, would you please raise your right hand to be sworn?
You swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
yes.
Do we have staff reports?
Planning Department reviewed this application, noted that the property known as 1609 Lawrence Street was last authorized for use as a tavern, which is the non-conforming use in the R8 zoning district where this property is located. 1607 Lawrence Street was last authorized for use as a single-family dwelling, including a family daycare center for 4 children. The zoning code contains a provision prohibiting expansion of non-conforming use in any manner unless the use of the land and structure is made to conform to the regulations of, in this case, the R8 zoning district. The addition of 1607 Lawrence Street to 1609 Lawrence Street use would therefore essentially double the non-conforming use, which is the tavern. On that basis of analysis, the department recommends disapproval of the application because the zoning code prohibits expansion of non-conforming uses. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, ma'am, did you understand the position of the Department of Planning?
Yes, sir. I just read this one. So.
Okay. So we've got a problem. The board doesn't have the authority to authorize expansions of non-conforming uses such as this. And because 1609 is an existing tavern, you're proposing to consolidate it with 1607, which is of record as a single-family dwelling. That would be, as Mr. Friend said, effectively doubling the size of the tavern use. So that's what the plan is. There's not really much that we can do to help you out at this point. Was there anything that you wanted to say?
No, sir.
No? Okay. If that's all, thank you very much. Okay. All right. Calling 2018-36, 3333 North Charles Street, Abraham Hurdle.
Abraham Hurdle. With me is Raman Surahan, who is the person who anticipates operating the business at this location.
Okay, and Mr. Hurdle, we have this as an application to add live entertainment and outdoor dining to the existing restaurant at this location. Is that correct?
Yes and no. There's no restaurant currently open and operating as of this moment.
Okay.
There used to be PJ's Pub. I'm not sure if everyone's aware.
Mm-hmm.
PJ's Pub used to have live entertainment for the longest time. My clients have taken over the space. They signed a super long lease with John Hopkins, who's kind of the senior owner of the property.
Mm-hmm.
And the goal is to have outdoor tables, some very brief live entertainment, and by that we mean maybe karaoke or trivia for the most part. I think we did discuss with the community small bands on the rarest of occasions. We met with the community numerous times.
Well, we haven't really gotten into the substance of the hearing since no one's been sworn in yet. I just wanted to confirm the description that we have of the application. You said that there is no existing restaurant that's there, so I guess it will just be add live entertainment and outdoor dining to restaurant.
Correct.
All right. If all those intending to give testimony would raise their right hands to be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Do we have staff reports?
Yes, Planning Department has reviewed this application, noted that there is a fairly full description of what the live entertainment would be in this situation. The department also notes that there would be 7 four-top tables placed in the side yard of this property, and that would be the outdoor seating area, outdoor dining area. The department recommends approval of the application, subject to these conditions. A copy of the use and occupancy permit for the premises must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. A copy of the written approval by the board of the live entertainment provided on the premises, including details of any restrictions or limitations on the live entertainment provided, must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. A copy of all other permits and licenses required pursuant to the written approval of the board must be kept on the premises and available for inspection by representatives of Baltimore City at all times. The capacity of the outdoor dining area will be not more than 7 tables and 28 patrons. The tables will be limited to those that can accommodate 4 patrons and are to be kept in the side yard of the building. There will be no outdoor bar, no outdoor music, jukebox, or other form of entertainment, and all patrons must be seated for dining and served by wait staff. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Hurdle, those conditions stated by the planning department, those are acceptable to your client?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with the space. Again, there's kind of a walk up from the sidewalk, kind of along, I guess, his own personal sidewalk and a walk up to the space. The space is actually kind of half underground. Previously, it was all bricked up on basically all sides except for the entryway and emergency exit. My client's gone through and we've got some nice window openings in there, so it's gonna be a little bit brighter, communal tables. Previously, there was kind of a packaged goods store as well when you kind of walked in to the entrance. That's been removed. This is gonna be a restaurant, and no real exception to the restaurant use. Plan to serve people outside. I think we had discussed 7 tables, and we met a couple times with the community, both at this location and elsewhere, to discuss it. We have an MOU that we're still kind of ironing out in terms of the signatures, but everything has been finalized. We had a liquor board hearing 2 weeks ago. We had originally scheduled this hearing to be on the 20th of March, and we're going to try to get the live entertainment through the liquor board at that time, but just didn't work out. But the MOU was made a restriction on the liquor license at that time. There are some, I don't think we have any hours restrictions, but we do have live entertainment restrictions. It's all in here. And I apologize, it's just
Very thorough agreement.
Ma'am, if you can come forward and identify yourself for the record.
Sandy Sparks. I am the chair of the Charles Village Civic Association's Land Use Committee and the immediate past president of the CVCA.
And I'd be happy to submit a copy of the MOU that's missing, I think, a couple of the signatures at this point, but it will be ironed out before we open up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and we, as is our custom, we negotiate an agreement, most often called an MOU, in which we work out the hours, the use, the live entertainment. It states here, live entertainment is permitted. Licensee shall be permitted to host a DJ, karaoke, trivia, and live music night. Noise regulations must be followed. Live bands shall not be amplified. Last call shall be no later than 1:30 a.m. on live entertainment nights. Under no circumstances shall the bar, when featuring entertainment, or for any reason be permitted to stay open past 2 a.m.
The location can be used as a home slice. I'm not sure if everyone's familiar. They have a couple locations in the city. They tend to be very well run, very well managed. I'm not aware of any problems that any of their locations have ever had in terms of liquor licensing or other violations that I'm aware of. The experienced operators. We anticipate that'll be the same thing here.
And the outdoor seating is limited to before 11 p.m. It's the, isn't it the Charles apartment building?
Yeah, it's
the
off
Hopkins,
the street. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Hopkins owned Charles apartment building. And the renovation is really quite, makeover is quite substantial. It's actually a welcoming space with the opening of this really handsome Palladian style windows. So it's going to be a very attractive place.
How many signatures do you need on that?
I just,
If I may, We need the 2 licensees as well as one of the vice presidents of John Hopkins Office of Facilities. We have both of the Charlesville Civic Association for land use and the president. The only reason these signatures haven't been gathered is we were supposed to have this zoning hearing on the 20th, and I think of March, and everyone was ready to be here for that. It got canceled due to weather. Ultimately, the liquor board hearing came up. This MOU, as it's written identically, but unsigned, was integrated as restrictions against a liquor license. Ms. Sparks has always been easy to deal with. We didn't think there were any concerns. I just have to locate my other client and the vice president of Hopkins Office of Facilities, but this is going to get resolved comfortably before we open. We anticipate about a few weeks, maybe a month before we can open, and even then, live entertainment, we have to go back to the liquor boards because of our kind of timing glitch. We have to have another hearing with them at live entertainment.
All right. How do you propose that we recognize this as a permitted use in this zoning district?
Well, the concern in this issue, I think, is the live entertainment, I think is what you're referencing. Outdoor table services.
No, it's more the restaurant use.
Well, this is a neighborhood commercial establishment.
Well, neighborhood commercial establishment would permit a restaurant use, that's correct. But under the code, that's what I was just looking at here, is that neighborhood commercial establishments are limited, looking at 14.328, neighborhood commercial establishments are uses limited to the reuse of existing buildings that
Correct.
were originally constructed and used for non-residential uses.
Well, I have a couple answers to that question, if I may. PJ's Pub has been there for
But
30
we're not
some
talking
odd
about
years.
PJ's Pub, though.
Well, we're just continuing their restaurant use. Their use permit was never properly issued, is my understanding. The previous use permit for this space indicated there were 2 retail units, and then it's kind of broken out into 1-bedroom efficiencies, 2-bedroom efficiencies, and I think maybe a couple of 3 bedrooms, I think is what I think ultimately the use permit we applied for indicates. Our goal was to reapply for that. When we went to the liquor board, they said, they talked to, Jeff Vio, and he indicated that while the use was existing and therefore could continue, the concern was that the use permit never explicitly stated that PJ's Pub use. So we had to go about adding, well, not so much adding, is just kind of defining that those retail units, that 1 retail unit is in fact a restaurant use, which it's always been. The liquor license there is a restaurant. I think it's been there for 40 some odd years. And we're just continuing that use. I believe the permit that we applied for indicates continuing use as a restaurant, and it kind of goes into that verbiage with the units of 25 1-bedrooms and single bed studios and so forth. Ms. Sparks, you're from the area, correct?
Yes, and PJ's Pub certainly served food, so it was kind of it was a legendary place, and at the time there were very few alternatives for people to go for drinks or basic bar food, and
because this is sort of the problem I'm seeing, is that the neighborhood commercial use is a newly created use under the new zoning code, which would predate the existence of PJ's Pub. The definition of a neighborhood commercial establishment doesn't apply in this instance because it's a neighborhood commercial uses are limited to buildings, as I said, that are non-residential in purpose. This is a residential building. It seems to me that your argument really is that you're bootstrapping on the existence of an existing restaurant.
Correct.
Not that you're a neighborhood commercial. But the issue there is that PJ's, you're telling me, was never actually properly permitted use.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I apologize if that's the way I phrased it. PJ's Pub, when they opened, the use permit that they were given, they've always been inspected as a, by the health department, zoning, everybody, as a restaurant. They've always had those permits. The issue is the use permit itself, apparently when it was issued some 30 odd years ago, it was issued, I think, more or less to the building at the time when they kind of did everything at once. And it was indicated, my understanding is the card says 2 retail units, and I think at the time, restaurant fell under that use, as well as single units, studios, and 2 bedrooms.
Mr. Baumgartner, do we have anything in the permit history?
I'm going through it right now.
Thanks.
You have zoning cards, which are difficult to read. The zoning card dated November 24th, 2009, I believe that says. Says issued to reduce from 85 dwelling units to 2 retail units and 5 rooming units. Under the old code and like the new code, retail and restaurant were entirely separate uses. They're not the same. Prior, there's looks like building permits issued for rebuilding cabinets. Don't know why that's on this card, but it is. In 2000, remove existing rooftops. Cabinetry approved. All right, here we go. 1983, there was a permit issued for a beauty shop and a restaurant.
There we go.
1995, the building increased its occupancy from 46 dwelling units to 55 dwelling units with an office. I'm sorry, with 51 efficiencies. There's no other reference to that restaurant use, which was authorized in 1983.
Can you pass those down?
Sure.
It's our understanding that PJ's Pub went in around 1983.
Now, when we started off, and I was going through the summary, I was reading through it, and I initially had said that the proposal was to add live entertainment and outdoor dining to the existing restaurant. You took issue with that and said there was no existing restaurant.
No, what I meant when I said that, Mr. Washington, was purely that the restaurant was closed. PJ's Pub was sold, this was probably late fall, and there's no open and operating restaurant there as of this moment. There was in the fall. My guys are doing construction right now. They look to be open in a month. That's all I meant. I apologize.
Okay. Next time, be a little bit more careful.
No, and I apologize. Sorry.
And may I add that we certainly would never have entered into an agreement if there was a question that the zoning was a problem.
Ms. Sparks, may I ask you a couple questions, if that's possible? Yeah. How long have you lived in the area?
Since 1966.
And to your knowledge, since PJ's Pub opened, it has been opened up until this fall, is that correct?
Yes.
And that's due to the renovations that my clients have endeavored to make?
Yes, it was absolutely necessary.
Thank you. hope that clarifies.
they-
I apologize.
They only closed in the fall.
That's correct. We had a liquor license hearing on the 5th.
And just to update you on what we've got here.
Sure.
If you can pass those down, Mr. Bungardner.
Sure.
So in our prior cases, listing the data sheet, got it going all the way back to 1938. There was a appeal at that time to use a first floor apartment as a beauty salon, then skip forward almost 50 years to 73 to house 80 dwelling units and 20 rooming units. It was in 73, it was approved. Then skip ahead 6 more years, case number 79-531, house 101 dwelling units. That was approved in October 1979. Then it skips ahead to 1996 with the installation of 9 antennas with equipment. It was conditional approval was given in 96. At the same time, there was permit issued to house 101 dwelling units and 2 retail units. The location that was approved in that same date in July of 1996. Skip ahead to 2016, 2016-80. It says paid for on 3/21/16 to add outdoor tables to restaurant, but then that appeal was not perfected, so they lodged the appeal, but they didn't go forward with it at that time. Looking at the city's, I guess the Department of Housing's permit search comes up with many of those same entries. There are some, there's one in 98 for some boiler work and piping. In 2000, there was an appeal concerning the antennas, it looks like, removing the cabinets, replacing antennas, etc. Also increasing the power that looks like it's going to it. And then some amendment concerning that. And continuing, there are entries in 2017, again concerning the antennas and the roof. There is a appeal to, again, I guess a permit was issued to add outdoor table service to an existing restaurant. There it comes up with that the certificate of occupancy was denied, and that was then voided out in March of 2016. Going forward, there are entries, again, concerning the antennas. In 2015, 2013, installation of an auxiliary generator. 2012, some work or permit was issued. A couple of permits issued for some signs, installation of a new gas meter, gas line, and that is it. So it looks like there's no reference to the restaurant use that was in the permit history. However, Mr. Baumgartner, do we have the zoning cards again?
We do.
I mean, it looks like it was something that sort of cropped up at some time and never really got clarified. Because in 83, we do have an entry here, certificate of occupancy issued, same as above, it says with beauty shop and restaurant. And that's on the zoning summary card, but there's no entries on the permit system or anywhere else that there was ever a permit issued. Mr. French, did the city planning department have any more light to shine on this?
The department considered specifically the question of, assuming this property did not actually have a functioning commercial use, could this proposed use be allowed? And it was the department's interpretation of section 14.327, which allows accessory non-residential uses in multifamily dwellings with 50 or more dwelling units in an R10 zoning district, that this use could be approved, and therefore the conditions that the department mentioned were recommended as conditions for approval.
Okay, so you're looking at this
In other words,
as the restaurant being a non-residential accessory use to the residential use.
because this multifamily building, according to the application, would have 85 units in it, which is well above the threshold required to establish an accessory restaurant in this building.
Okay. That looks like it might work.
And may I add that accessory use was really the only type of retail that was allowed in that area of Charles Village up until the time we created the North Charles Village PUD to open up the opportunities for retail in the area. So those old apartment buildings, which this is one of them, had typically a beauty shop and a restaurant. I also would hope that PJ's Pub had a liquor license all that time. So, that as verification of the use.
Any other questions? No. Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Last but not least, 2017-45, 2018-4, and 2018-25, all 6500 St. Helena Avenue. 2017-485, appellant is Ms. Becky Witt, and 2018-4 and 2018-25 are appeals by Hanger LLC. Okay. All right, Ms. Witt, I guess we'll start with you.
Sure.
Of your appeal as an appeal to appeal the decision of the zoning administrator on permit number COM 2017-13598 issued on November 29, 2017, authorizing interior build-out of existing bar as per plans, as per code, end quote, with amending permits, naming contractors, COM 2017-18, 157, COM 2017-18-185, and COM 2017-68, 429.
Yes.
Okay, and Mr. Hurdle?
Yes.
I have for, you representing the Hangar LLC, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, we have those appeals, that is 2018-4, and 2018-4 is a proposal to continue to use as tavern, and 2018-25, appeal to construct a one-story rear addition and use premises as a restaurant. All right, so seeing as how both of these concern really the same property, you're both appellants, but for separate issues. Who wants to go first? I guess on the docket, Ms. Witt, we have you going first, and Ms. Hurdle, Mr. Hurdle, we have both of your cases next. I don't know sort of how it plays out as far as issues in one versus the other.
So as far, Becky Witt on behalf of the St. Helena Community Association here with Shirley Gregory, who's the president of that organization. As far as the negative appeal that was filed in late 2017, that was really because the community was opposing the continuation of the non-conforming, we believe, tavern use. And there had been an application earlier in 2017 by a different attorney on the current property owner's behalf to continue to use the property as a tavern, but that was not completed. It was postponed and then never rescheduled. So when work started happening on the property under these permits, we filed the negative appeal because we wanted to make sure that the current property owners understood that the community was opposing the continuation of the tavern use. We didn't want them to get all the way through the renovation and then for us to come in and oppose the continuation of the tavern use. So that was why the negative appeal was filed. So essentially, the issues in our negative appeal are identical to the issues that would be raised in case number 2018-4, which occurred after our negative appeal to continue to use as a tavern. It's all the same issues for us.
Okay.
So I don't know who should go.
Oh, yes, since you'd be taking a negative appeal of that, Mr. Hurdle, I guess why don't we recognize you as the applicant on that appeal?
Sure.
And what's 2018-25? I guess that's just an expansion.
There's two different, so one of the appeals is to continue the use of the tavern, which has been the pre-existing use for, my understanding is quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
My clients can certainly speak to that. This whole issue kind of originates from, I guess, the sale of the property from the previous owners to my clients, which occurred roughly last summer.
Mm-hmm.
There was a liquor license transfer hearing. There was a question at that time of continuous use. That was addressed at that hearing. The liquor license was permitted to transfer. They found it to be open, operating, and valid. And again, it's my understanding that it was permitted to be transferred. My clients are trying to speak to that as well. And from that point forward, my clients went about trying to open their new tavern, I guess new used. And it was only at that time when there was an attempt to expand a kitchen for the tavern that there was this additional resistance that we found. This was the previous appeal that was filed, I think, early in the fall, was an attempt to expand the tavern use to include a kitchen so that we could serve more food as opposed to just kind of microwave food. That was never followed through with. My clients then went out, got the permits to just continue using the tavern use. And I have some pictures. The property is in a very interesting state of repair. Got the pictures back there.
Well, it seems to me, and Ms. Witt, why don't you let me know if you agree that the issues in that second appeal, that is 2018-25, which is proposing to expand the tavern use, I'm going to guess your position is it can only be expanded to the extent that it exists, right?
If I may, I apologize. I think one of the appeals we have is just to merely continue the use as a tavern. The other is to expand it as a restaurant.
That's correct.
Correct. Sorry.
Certainly. So we are arguing that the tavern use has been abandoned as of the former licensee's death in November 2015. And we would also be arguing against any restaurant use under the neighborhood commercial section of the new zoning code.
Okay.
And against any expansion.
Okay. And again, your position there as far as against the expansion would be that the tavern use went away once it ceased to be operated.
Yes, and certainly that the tavern use couldn't be expanded because it's a non-conforming use as well. You can't expand under a non-conforming use, and we would make a similar argument for the restaurant use, which I'm sure we'll get to, that you can't expand a building with a neighborhood commercial use.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Hurdle, you'll be the appellant.
Sure.
Today, and Ms. Witt, you'll, even though you have a negative appeal, you'll, I guess, be recognized here as the appellee. All right. If all those intending to give testimony can raise their right hands to be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this hearing will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. All right. Do we have staff reports?
Yes, we have two letters from Councilman Z. Cohen, excuse me, and City Council President Jack Young. Both are in reference to case 25. I am writing you regarding the request to remove the front vestibule and construct a one-story rear addition at 6500 St. Helena Avenue. The applicant intends to use the property as a tavern operating within an R6 zoning district. Members of the St. Helena Community Association and other residents of the neighborhood have expressed concerns with the past operation of a tavern in this location, which included increased drug activity in the area and fights breaking out around the establishment. I do not believe that the applicant has taken the necessary steps to alleviate the community's concerns. The St. Helena Community Association also presented financial statements demonstrating that the establishment has made no sales in nearly 2 years. The association contests that the establishment has been in active and continuous use as a non-conforming use tavern in the R6 district, and they strongly believe that the owner-operators should be required to apply for a continuation of the non-conforming use at this property. The property has also been reported for construction starting on the requested rear addition prior to the BMZA hearing without proper approval. For these reasons, I support the St. Helena Community Association and join them in opposing this appeal before the BMZA. Councilman Young's letter, President Young's letter, repeats the same points. Does planning have a report?
All right. Planning Department has no comment, for the record, on the negative appeal. However, the Planning Department does have comment on both appeal number 2018-4 and 2018-25. I'll read the comment first on 2018-4, which was the appeal to continue the use as a tavern, and notes that this property is in an R6 general residence district in which the tavern use is a non-conforming use. And the department noted the issue about whether the tavern was operating for or not, and specifically whether it was not operating for a period of 12 or more consecutive months. However, the department has no information to provide the board concerning that matter and obviously encourages the board to look into that. However, there is also an issue about expansion, and the department would have no objection to the application if the establishment has been a continuing non-conforming use and could therefore continue to be a non-conforming use and was not abandoned prior to the filing of the application. With regard to appeal number 2018-25, this particular property is improved with a structure which is a non-conforming structure under the terms of the zoning code. And the department has noted that this non-conforming structure dates all the way back to the 1920s based upon information available to the department. And the neighborhood was residential to a certain extent, except for this particular structure. This structure is now zoned residential and therefore is a non-conforming structure. The zoning code does not allow expansion of a non-conforming structure. This is in section 18-403 of the zoning code. The department therefore recommends that approval of the portion of this application relating only to use of the property, if granted, be subject to the condition that the neighborhood commercial establishment, which would be a restaurant with no live entertainment and dancing, continues to comply with all requirements and standards contained in the zoning code. The department recommends disapproval of the portion of the application relating to a one-story rear addition to the existing structure because the existing structure is non-conforming and the zoning code does not authorize any increase in the bulk of that structure. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Hurdle.
So I think the first thing that we're going to try to address is the non-permitted work, if that's possible. Just try to get that other way, if that's okay. Mr. Mathis, please step up. Mr. Mathis, you're familiar with the property, is that correct?
Yes. Mr. Hurdle, I need his full name.
Sure.
Don Mathis.
Spell the last name.
M-A-T-H-E-S.
And you're familiar with the permits that have been received and the work that's been done?
Yes.
With regards to the unauthorized work, what can you tell me about there's an allegation that you've expanded the property already, is that correct?
We've not. We've just redid the existing building.
In terms of redoing it, that means you've repaired the roof, is that correct?
Right.
Is
Four
this a picture-
existing walls stayed. The four existing walls stayed. We removed the roof and put new trusses up because the roof was all leaking and bad. It was in bad shape.
Is this an accurate picture of
That's the original
previous property?
when we bought it. Yes.
Yeah, but the,
I have a photo of the property as it existed when they purchased the property. And Mr. Mathis, is this an accurate representation of where the property looks more or less today? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And in terms of structural expansion, it's merely been a single roof that's been added, is that correct?
Yes. And reinforcing the walls. That's it.
But they haven't been expanded?
No, not at all.
that's these.
What do you mean by reinforcing the walls?
To bring them up, some of the studs was like 2 feet apart. We added studs for the building inspector.
And you added windows, is that correct as well?
Yes, we put the 3 windows on the west side of the building.
But ultimately, it's just been, for the most part, cosmetic work.
Yes.
Would you say the building looks better now?
About 100% or better.
You added a handicap ramp, is that accurate as well?
Handicap ramp and handrail. This wall here, the front wall, had no safety features whatsoever. Anybody, kids playing or whatever, could just fall off the wall. We have handrail all the way around the structure and everything now.
This is a picture from the corner. With regards to any interior work, it has been, again, non-structural HVAC and the bar. Is that accurate?
Pretty much, yes.
Is this a picture of what it looks like now?
Yes.
Mr. Hurdle, do you want to make these pictures part of the record, or do you
I'd
want
certainly like to
these
make them
back?
exhibits if that's possible. Yes, please. I'm not sure if you want to make them collectively one exhibit or
Your call.
4 different exhibits.
Your
I'd like
call.
to make them one exhibit just for bookkeeping's sake, if that's possible.
Sure.
Mr. Mathis, all the work that has been done, to your knowledge, has been using licensed contractors. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Do you have one of those contractors with you today?
Yes, I do.
And what's his name?
Willie Burke.
William Burke, B&B Custom Contracting.
Sir, if you please state your name and address for the
My
record.
name's William Burke. B&B Custom Contracting.
Are you a licensed contractor, Mr.
Yes,
Burke?
I am.
And what sort of work did you do on this property?
We tore off the leaking caved-in roof. We put new trusses out, reinforced the walls, put windows, the 3 windows in. Drywall, redid the floor, and redid the 2 bathrooms. The bathrooms were like 3 foot by 3 foot wide. You barely walk into them.
All this work's been permitted properly, is that correct?
Yes.
When was this work done, Mr. Burke? When?
We started like November 30th or December 1st or something. The permits were pulled.
Oh, last year?
Yeah, just 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay. And before you started work, did you go into the premises at all?
Yes.
Okay. And what did it look like from the inside? You said that the roof was leaking or something?
Yeah, the roof was leaking. It was pretty bad. Yeah, I mean, the roof was leaking. It just looked like it ain't been updated since like 1975. It was just look, you know what I mean? Like
an old building.
Very old building, yeah.
All right. Was there any significant water damage or anything like that had occurred?
Just you could just tell where people just try to put more tile over top of tile over for the ceiling to hide from the leaking or something. You know what I mean? Just putting Band-Aids over everything.
Gotcha.
Literally everything.
Okay.
Thank.
At this time, I'm not sure we have much more to say about the permitting issue with regards to the unauthorized work. We can certainly go on. We have some more testimony. Ma'am, you've been at the premises.
Well, we're, as I said, we're proceeding right now with your case as the appellant under 2018-4 and 2018-25. One is to continue to use as a tavern. The other one is to construct a 1-story addition and use the premises as a restaurant.
Sure.
So that's really where the focus is right now.
Excellent. Mr. Mathis, please step up again. Mr. Mathis, you were pursuing this property. When did you start looking at this property?
February of 2017, I think is when we put in the offer.
And that property was open, the business was, is that correct?
Yes.
And
when you say open, what do you mean?
It had working beer, it had beer in it. When we were shown by the realtor, the coolers were working, the lights were working. It had a leak in the roof. But
what time of day was it when you went in there?
I think we met over there about 11 in the afternoon.
Was it open for business?
I didn't see no customers that day. We had just met for the sale of the property.
It was 11, correct?
Yeah, about 11 in the morning.
And Mr. Mathis, this issue came up previously at the liquor board, is that correct?
Yes.
Whether it was open and operating?
Yes.
Different standard, not interested in it.
I understand. I'm still going to ask a question. And Mr. Mathis, at the time, the liquor board heard testimony from the previous owner with regards to it being open and operating. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And what did she testify to?
Do you have a witness?
I'm having him testify. I'm not sure who the opposing counsel was in this. I'm starting to get confused with this.
I'm sorry?
I'm just getting confused as to who I'm fighting against, I guess.
You have a burden, sir.
And I'm trying to meet that burden.
You have to produce evidence. You can't have, if you would like to present testimony of a witness who's testified in a previous proceeding.
Sure.
The way you typically do that is you introduce a transcript from that former proceeding. Do you have that transcript?
I don't have it with me now.
Do you have that witness who testified?
No.
Okay. So then you are trying to offer secondhand.
Hearsay.
That's correct. Of a witness who's not here to be cross-examined.
Yes. I'm aware. It's a zoning hearing, and my understanding is the standards are a little looser than, say, a court hearing.
They are, but they're not entirely suspended.
I understand. I'm trying to do the best I can.
Okay.
Mr. Mathis, the outcome of that hearing, where the question of the license being active and operating, what was the outcome?
It'd be better if you
Sure.
talk to Val.
Val, please step up. What's your first and last name, Val?
Valerie Burke, B-U-R-K-E. Hi.
You were at the liquor board hearing this summer?
Yes. We were supposed to purchase the property in March 1st of 2017. But we also had a contingency that the liquor license was valid and that I would be approved. We did a hearing, everything that was approved. Mrs. Gregory came and disapproved. They approved me. I put in application through the architect for the building. We were approved. I'm going to say 2 weeks later, we got a letter from the city saying we were disapproved for that drawing. So we needed to resubmit new drawings for the pre-existing space.
This was for
without the expansion of a kitchen.
And then you said you were disapproved by whom?
By the zoning board. We got a letter in the mail from the city saying R6 zoning laws have changed since June.
If I may, I can clarify.
I don't know nothing.
The first zoning use plan you put in was to do the construction you're seeking and add a kitchen. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And they asked you to reapply without the additional kitchen. Is that correct?
Yes, due to a new law. Yes.
Okay. At the liquor board hearing in July, what was the outcome?
We were approved by the liquor board. They gave us an extension to do the existing work that needed to be on the property, and then just kept getting more letters in the mail saying we had to go back. We had a hearing that was postponed due to our lawyer wasn't here to represent us. And then after that, we went back and we were supposed to come on the 20th. It snowed, it was delayed. It's just been a process of days and days.
To your knowledge, ma'am, the property has always been open and operating, is that correct?
That's what I was told, and that was the contingency in us purchasing the property, that it had a valid liquor license, and the former owner, he had passed, but his children had inherited, and they had to abide by some law where they had to open once a month. The lady had her own job where she made really good money, and she didn't want to proceed to keep this bar running. She wanted to sell it.
So your understanding of open and operating is what?
That it had a valid license.
Okay.
And that I personally, I'm just going to say, I would have never opened that establishment in the condition it was in.
Okay.
So that to me was important because I'm putting my stamp on it.
Sure.
And, you know, if you invite people to your house and you want to make sure it looks nice.
Understandable. In your understanding of it being open and operating, do you have any personal knowledge of that yourself? For example, did you go there? Did you maybe drive by it?
I drove by a few times. According to the owner, she had a full-time job. She was open it so many days a month to keep the valid liquor license due to the crisis in her family. She had previously had someone to purchase the property. Now this is what the seller and the realtor explained to me. They had a date to go to settlement, and they had already had their hearing with the community center, and they did not show up for the sale. So I don't know what that situation is. You know, that's none of my concern. My concern was that the license was valid and that they were going to let me renovate the building.
And that's certainly what the seller had advised you, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you were relying on that?
And I also was relying on the liquor board, because this wasn't, it wasn't like I was going to the store to buy bubble gum. Yes. And, you know, it's like buying the house, and they give you the keys, and then you stand at the door and say you can't come in, but you can pay the payment. So that's the situation that I was in, and I'm like, what do you mean?
We did not purchase the property until after the liquor board's decision that the liquor license was transferable. So we took it that everything was good to go.
Okay.
It was sold, it was advertised as a commercial property from the realtor. So we took it that everything was good to go, because if this would have been an issue brought up at that time, we'd have never purchased the property.
Sure.
So, you know, and that's why we went ahead and invested it. And then once the liquor license gave us so long to start serving beer, or we lose our license, that's why we proceeded with the construction, so we could meet their time frame. And that's where we're at this point.
And I'm sorry, in March, we were supposed to settle on March 1st, but that got postponed, and it didn't become till after June, maybe mid-June.
Yeah, the new law came.
And then we missed the date by like 3 days of this new June 6th law, and we had no idea what we got ourselves into.
It can be a daunting regulatory framework when you're dealing with business transfers.
Ma'am, is your understanding that the bar was never abandoned? Is that correct?
To my knowledge, I was told it was never abandoned. It was just where it's a grievance or some law due to the city that if to keep the license going. I'm not sure of the proper word. I may be wrong with the word. Hardship. It's hardship that if, you know, if my dad owns a store and I have to keep it running for so long, but I don't want to run the store. Do I have a grievance of some sort? That's what I was explained to at the liquor board when I.
To your knowledge, ma'am, has the property ever received a vacant property notice or some sort of vacancy notice?
No. No.
At this time, I have no further questions.
Okay. Of this witness, or?
With my clients.
Okay. Any other witnesses?
No.
All right. Ms. Witt, did you have any questions of any of the?
No. Are we only doing the tavern portion of the hearing right now, or is it all of it?
Am I doing the restaurant aspect now?
Yeah, we'll do both, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I apologize.
That's okay.
Sure. I guess then I'll proffer for a moment. Under the neighborhood commercial establishment exception again, as we discussed briefly in the hearing, this location has been commercial use. It's been a tavern for some time. Seeking the restaurant use would be permitted. I would say it's a conditional use, not so much a non-conforming use under this section. With regard to the expansion, while I certainly appreciate Mr. French's opinion and planning's opinion, I would disagree. I believe that there have been several expansions of these restaurant, neighborhood commercial establishment locations in the city. I think since the law went into effect in June, there have been, I would say, 2 controlling cases. I'll let the board decide which one kind of falls more closely in this. My understanding is that there was one where the establishment was allowed to expand from a first floor to a second floor, and that was approved. And there was one where the establishment asked to move from one property to an adjacent property. So they would go from 1921 to 1923, and that was disapproved. I believe in this situation, it would be much more like the first one. We're staying within our property bounds. The only concern would be possibly setbacks, and that's on the one edge, and we could certainly expand straight back from the middle of the bar if we need, as opposed to along the building edge, which would be the non-conforming setback. The square footage that's being added is, I think, less than 500 square feet total, and the use for that square footage is purely for a kitchen, so we can have kind of more advanced food preparation than, say, a microwave and one of those fancy broilers. The total square footage with the expansion would fall under the parking requirements for the neighborhood commercial establishment, and therefore wouldn't have to have any additional parking. The property does have, I believe, 3 spaces and a handicap spot as it currently sits. The goal would be to have 75 seats in the property and run it like a restaurant. That would limit the liquor license, whether it's a tavern or other style, to more than 50% food. And we have discussed certain other possible restrictions in terms of the way the property is managed with the neighborhood. Those discussions have been more or less rebuffed at this time, but we would ask for if we weren't allowed to continue as a tavern, we would ask to be allowed to operate as a restaurant at this location, ideally with the ability to expand the kitchen for full use in that kitchen. We certainly do appreciate planning recommending approval of the restaurant use, though without the expansion, I think is what was discussed. I want to make sure I don't put words into Mr. French's mouth. Is that right?
It's not right.
That's correct. The property, because it was never built as a residential property, is eligible for consideration for the neighborhood commercial establishment use, which includes the restaurant. But because it's a non-conforming structure under the code, it is not eligible for expansion. That is our determination.
I think there would be a happy medium for kind of all parties involved would be the restaurant use if we had to go that way.
Okay. Anything further right now?
Sure. Mr. Mathis, you step up. If given the opportunity to run this location as a restaurant as opposed to a tavern, you would sell more than 50% food, is that correct?
Yes.
And you would operate it again primarily as a restaurant. Food would be your primary source of income?
Yes.
I have no further questions at this time. Ms. Witt, do you have any questions?
Did the footprint of the building change at all in your renovations, including the back corner of the building at all? Do you recognize that corner of the building?
Yeah, that was just, that's just a storage. It's no access to inside the building or not. It's just like a shed.
It's
Because the roof was over, the trusses were over,
Okay,
so.
okay. So, but you did build additional walls around there,
Just so
around that corner,
Yeah, it's just just for a storage shed.
for a storage shed? Okay.
Is this a shed that's connected to the building, or?
Yes, it was a spot in a little L shape that's probably 5 foot by 8 feet. And when we put the trusses on, we ran the trusses all the way through, and we just closed that in and made it a storage shed. It has no,
Cinder block down. Okay.
yeah,
One
has
witness
no,
at a time.
has no entrance to the building at all. It's all exterior.
Is there a foundation underneath the space?
It just has one column that was built in a beam for the trusses, and then we just closed it in and made it a storage
Is
unit.
that because you use the same trusses from one edge to the back edge
Yes,
of the
we
building?
didn't want to, if last four trusses, we didn't want special order trusses for that section. And we have them.
Okay.
I'm sorry, was that work, that was permitted work too, correct?
Yes, everything was done by permit. And everything was 100% inspected.
Do you have any proof to show what the building was originally used for when it was first built?
No, I don't. I think he said it was built in the 20s. I have no idea.
Okay.
I think it turned into a bar, I think, when 1947 or something.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but you don't know what it was between the 1920s-ish when it was built and 1947? Okay.
No.
Okay, those are all my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Hurdle? Either redirect or any other witnesses?
Mr. Mathis, to your understanding, it's always been a commercial use property, is that correct?
Yes, that's what I was thinking. I thought I was purchasing when I talked to the realtor.
Anytime you've done any research on this, it's always come back as always being commercial, is that accurate?
I really didn't look at the research. Didn't research it to see if it was commercial or not. You had a sign up, raised tavern, you know, I mean, it was commercial on the thing. Went through the settlement and all that stuff, so we kind of figured it was once the liquor board said it was okay, we figured that it was a bar.
I have no further questions.
Any other witnesses?
With regards to the restaurant use,
Well, I guess with regard to either of the petitions you filed.
with regards to either of the petitions I filed, sure, Mr. Mathis, if granted a restaurant use today without the expansion, you would operate as a restaurant, is that correct?
It'd make it a little tight, but we could, yes. It
Um,
would be a limited menu.
I have no further questions.
What was that last question? I'm sorry. What was that
I'm
last
sorry.
question?
My last question was, if allowed to operate as a restaurant without the expansion, you would operate as a restaurant, correct?
Yes.
He said yes with a limited menu. Was his response.
What does that mean?
But we would have to, we wouldn't have the kitchen space to kind of make a full, meals and more of a restaurant sit-down meal.
If I may.
Well, how can you be a restaurant without a kitchen?
Well, I didn't say without kitchen, I said without a full kitchen, I'm sorry.
Without a full kitchen.
Doesn't have a deep fryer, wouldn't have an oven.
What would you serve at that, if you were operating that way?
Have to go with like cold sandwiches, pizzas, maybe, stuff like that. I mean, there's not much more you can, you can't make a meatloaf. So,
But you would have 51, or more than 50% of your receipts would be food.
yes.
Sure.
May I say something?
Ma'am, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yes. After everything is done, already been renovated, we've came to the conclusion, I thought, that even if we didn't get the expansion for the kitchen, we have enough space in one area where we could put a kitchen, a full kitchen, where we could have an oven, a fryer, and everything that we need. My recollection, I'm a little confused because I thought we needed the full kitchen on the expansion on the back of the building due to we needed 75 seats. Am I correct? Am I correct? In order to make it a restaurant tavern, a restaurant bar, I need 75 seatings?
If we were trying to get a restaurant license, that may be the case, ma'am.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
That's fine. You would operate a menu using the kitchen you could place in the location, is that correct?
Yes, if I had to, I can make it work, and I would make enough space for it.
Your preference would be the expansion?
My preference would be, because I think that it would look, it's gonna still look nice, but I think it was the first visual in my brain at the purpose of when we purchased the property. But if it's not, I can accept using my pre-existing space. It's just that I don't, I'm fine with that. I just want to come to a compromise where it's, I'm fine with, using the pre-existing spaces. That's where, it goes to. I'm fine with that. I can make it work.
Ms. Wood, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Is that it, Mr. Hurdle?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Wood.
Okay, so I think, as always often happens with businesses that have a liquor license and a zoning component, we're getting the law a bit mixed together. So I will stipulate that the liquor license at this location is valid, and it has been transferred to the licensees who you've already heard from. Because the previous licensee died, that puts the liquor license on a completely different track, and the 180-day rule doesn't apply, and so it's just a completely different section of the law. You get a lot of extra time when the licensee dies to have the will go through all the steps it needs to go through. So we're not here to talk about the liquor license. The licensees can feel free to sell that license if they need to. It is valid as of right now, to my knowledge. What we're here to talk about is whether they can use that license at this location, whether as a tavern or as a restaurant. And so it's the community's point of view that this tavern use was lost after the licensee died in November 2015. So I will just call Shirley Gregory to testify a little bit about that. So Shirley, can you state your name and your address?
Shirley Gregory,
6512 St. Helena Avenue,
So how far away from the bar do you live?
6 houses.
And you're the president of the community association?
Yes, I am.
So, to your understanding, do you know what the building was originally used for when it was built?
Yeah, I actually did a little bit of research. I went to the Dundalk Historical Society, found out originally it was built around 1920, but I was not able to find the exact year. But it was a house, and a gentleman by the name of Frank lived there, and he wanted a candy store. So he actually, the house next door to him at 6504, which was a townhouse because the houses next to it are townhomes, he decided then he would buy 6504, move his family in there so he could have Frank's candy store. So he turned 6500 into a candy store. And then he actually had a tunnel built from 6504 to go to 6500. So during the snowstorms, he didn't have to worry about going in and out or being robbed with his money.
This wasn't during Prohibition, was
No,
it?
I guess not. But this is the story that I was given and what was in the history. So then he decided he wasn't making enough money selling candy, so he decided he would open it up as a tavern, but he would only sell beer because he was a religious man, and he believed that selling alcohol was against his religion, but he didn't think beer was against his religion. So he opened it up and he sold beer for many years. Then the neighborhood wanted him to sell alcohol, harder alcohol, so he decided to sell it, and he sold it to a guy named Lou. So then it became Lou's Tavern, and he opened it up as a full tavern with, you know, all the alcohol and the beer. And then from there, it went on to Ray's Tavern, and now to where we are today.
Going
So-
back to your history, when
Yes.
the original gentleman built the house, was
Yes.
it used immediately as a candy store?
No, it was actually used as a home. I was told it was a 2-bedroom house. And if you look at the picture of it, it was just a square house, and it had a porch. And then they closed in the front porch. Here it is. They closed in the front porch to be part of the house. And that's how that actually took place.
And so this screenshot from Google Maps is what the property looked like before the renovation, correct?
Correct. Yes, that's what it looked like originally.
Okay.
So that's the history of
Okay.
65.
So, and
These are all the same?
yes, they're all the same, yeah. So can you describe what it was like to live next to Ray's when it was open back before Ray died in November of 2015?
It was pretty bad. I'm sorry?
I would object to this question.
Why?
I
I live there. I'm sorry.
Is there a basis?
I don't know that the previous occupant ran the bar, operated the bar, is in any way relevant to this appeal, which is to continue use as a tavern or to operate as a restaurant. I think that that's certainly something that if there's a violation of the zoning code would be reasonable, but what this guy did and the way he ran his tavern, whether it was good, bad, alcohol, you know, only cheap stuff, I don't know that that makes a difference in terms of whether he was a tavern or not. And I think the testimony is irrelevant and just wastes time.
I'm going to overrule the objection. The witness is describing really her motivation in coming forward.
Thank you.
If you could just briefly kind of describe what it was like.
Yeah, we used to have a lot of problems with gangs in the neighborhood. They would actually go to that particular location on the corner. And there were 2 incidents where guns were found right in front of Ray's on the grass area. A child actually came by and picked one up. Then there was gunfire that actually happened at the establishment. There were knives that were being pulled out. There was actually a drug dealing that used to happen on one corner. They would go and give the money to the one drug dealer at the beginning of St. Helena Avenue and then drive down St. Helena. The guy would come out of Ray's Tavern, and then that guy would actually give him the drugs. So that way, neither one had the drugs or money on them. And it was like, I guess, the perfect storm for us. But it was pretty bad at the time for many years, and the loud music wasn't fun either, so.
So, to your knowledge, when did Ray, the former licensee, die?
He died in November of 2015.
Okay. And could you tell a difference right away?
Oh, yeah, I got real quiet fast.
Did you check to see if the bar was operating at all after he died during that time period?
Yeah, I was actually going over pretty much every day, pulling on the door to see if it was open, but it was never opened every day. And I live only 6 houses down, so I would actually check. I would even look to see if the door, because they used to always prop the door open because of poor ventilation, and it was never opened at all.
You mean they used to prop the door open when Ray operated it?
Yes, when Ray operated the door, when he operated, because of the ventilation inside, it was pretty poor.
Okay. And so you never heard of anybody going inside and ordering a drink and being served there after Ray passed away?
No, nobody.
Okay.
And I also know there was no sales at all.
Has the property been has the property?
Ma'am, you said that you're aware that there were no sales.
Yes.
How are you aware of that?
My attorney actually pulled the records showing that no alcohol had been purchased and that no sales have been done in a year and a half or 2-year pan. She has the records. So,
Okay.
sorry.
And Ms. Witt, these are the sales and use tax
I
returns?
do have more copies, but
They're
it seems like
with
you
our
already
materials
have.
here.
Okay. So,
I was going to say, do you want to provide them to the witness and
Yeah.
see if that's what she recalls seeing?
so you said Mr. Bondura died about in November of
2015.
So these records are between December of 2015 for 12 months through November of 2016. Are these the records that you remember seeing before?
That's correct.
And they show no sales, not one sale for 12 months straight, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. Back to my question. Has the property, to your knowledge, been expanded in the past, I guess, 4 or 5 months?
The only thing that I noticed, what was on the rear that I showed you, that it had been bumped out where the water, where the gas meter is. He said they turned it in the shed, but I do not know if it is or if it is not. I can only state what I saw with the construction of it.
And the community association discussed Ray's Tavern more than once, and they voted against it, correct?
Yes, I actually brought the minutes, but I only brought one set. I apologize. Didn't realize there were that many of you. Yeah, I brought the minutes I have from February 2nd, 2017. These are official minutes that were submitted. Here's March 2nd, 2017, and this is way before that we even knew they were going to purchase the place or even knew them. So there's those. Sorry about that. We have September 7th, 2017. I have December 7th, 2017, and February 1st, 2018 minutes from our community association meetings. We meet the first Thursday of every month, except during the summer months, we're closed.
Do you have anything else to add? I don't have any.
I did, I laid it down. Oh, there it is, thank you. Yeah, one of the things that was brought to my attention, that the neighbor right next door to the new owners of the establishment, that they started the construction, and when they started the construction, that they literally would leave all of their stuff. I'm sorry?
I object to this testimony.
Okay.
Is there a basis?
Hearsay? She has no personal knowledge.
Yes, I do.
I'm not going to belabor the irony, but I'll say overruled.
Thank you.
Continue?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, that they were leaving their trash and everything leaning against the fence, and I did go and look at it myself, is what I was about to say. There were cinder blocks leaning against the neighbor's fence. There was trash laying all over, and I had even called and spoke to 311 about it, and they went out and told them, please clean up after you're done. Well, no one ever cleaned up anything, and the mess was all over the place. Then they actually decided to put a fence up in the front, and they actually connected it, well, not quite connected, maybe that far away from the house at 6504. And I don't know where the land property ends, but that means if anybody goes behind there, it's not safe, for one, and it's right up against somebody's window in their house. So I think if anything, they would have done a fence that went down so it was not a connection and an opening maybe between the two homes. And this is one of the things that the neighbor was very concerned about as well.
Anything else to add?
Just that there is no kitchen in there, so that's one of the things that we were concerned about. If they were going to have, if they have to stay within the existing format of what they have, and they don't have a kitchen, how can you have a restaurant? So that was one of our biggest things that we wanted to bring, so if you can't expand on it, so.
What does the community want to see in this building?
We would love to see it go back as a house. That's what we had hoped. Honestly, when we had our meetings and we talked about it, everybody kept saying, wow, you know, he passed away. They haven't opened the bar. This is our chance to get our neighborhood back to being peaceful and quiet again, where we don't have all this disturbance, but yet all of a sudden somebody wants to buy it, and we're like, you're kidding me, you know? So we were like, it's at the very end of the community. There's nothing there, just houses. There's no parking. It's two-way. There's parking on both sides on St. Helena Avenue, and everybody owns 2 cars. So, you know, when you come home, we don't have driveways because they're townhouses. So we have to rely on street parking to park in front of our homes. In front of the bar, there's about 2 parking spaces. And then on the side of Ray's Tavern, I know it's not Ray's anymore, but on the side of it, there's about 3 parking spaces. And then they have a space in the rear that may hold 3 or 4 cars, but that's it. And the rest is all going to be on St. Helena Avenue, and there is no parking there at all. So it's very tight. You come home at 5 o'clock, all the spots are taken, and you're struggling to find a parking space.
Are you concerned about it becoming a vacant property?
I'm sorry?
Are you concerned about it becoming a vacant property?
No, I'm not.
Do you have questions for Shirley?
I do.
Okay.
I'm sorry, ma'am, what was your last name again? I apologize.
Gregory.
It's Gregory. Ms. Gregory, you said you went over the location and you pulled on the door, is that right?
That's correct.
Did you ever call the business's phone number?
No, I have not called the business's phone number.
So you never called to check to see if someone was operating it, or there was a voicemail you could leave?
No, but I did go on Facebook, and it stated that the business was closed permanently.
Do you have a printout of that?
I did. I turned it into the liquor board, and they kept it.
So,
It's in their records. I do not have it anymore.
okay. But you never called the number to see if they were open on occasion?
No.
And the liquor board found that they were open, correct?
I'm sorry?
The liquor board did find that they were open, is that correct?
No, they just said that they were going to transfer the license. They never said that it was open. They showed a picture of someone sitting at the bar, which was the owner.
Sure.
I know the owner, the old owner, so.
With regards to the guns and drugs, what does that have to do with it being open in the last 12 months or not?
It's been more peaceful and quiet. When you have a bar, you have the alcohol, you have the urination on your fences and your properties, you have the trash, you have the cans, the bottles, the noise. It's loud. It's not, we're not just talking guns and knives, we're talking about what a bar brings to this community and how much it can disrupt your community. It can be a good thing, but in the same token, it can be a very bad thing. And we already have 5 bars in our community. So I'm like, how many more bars do we need? We have Airport Grill, which is just bought by Pickles Pub. We have Donna's Tavern. We have the Duck Pond. We had Ray's, and then we also had Vietnam Vet, thank you. Almost forgot it. And we also have the Dunbar. So I'm like, I don't know how many, and we only have 241 homes.
Is it possible people from outside the community might come to the bar or restaurant?
Well, if more of our people come in, then there goes my parking.
This is street parking, correct?
Yes.
If they were to have a kitchen in this location and operate it as a restaurant, would you have any further objections at that time?
Yes,
What would those objections be, ma'am?
that I don't approve of it.
On a personal level, a moral level?
No, we just don't want it. The association, the association doesn't. I'm only speaking for what they told me at the meetings.
Okay. I have no further questions at this time.
So I would like to, at this time, just make a bit of argument.
If I may, I'd like to recall one of my witnesses. I'm sorry.
Sure.
Thank you. Val?
Well, actually, hold on a second. 'Cause the way that we normally go is that it's appellant opposition and then goes back to you, so she can wind up.
Sure.
Okay.
It's back to you.
Okay, so just to be clear about which application I'm talking about at which time. For the tavern use, the code says that when the active and continuous operation of any nonconforming use has been discontinued for 12 consecutive months, the use has been abandoned. And I think you were right, Mr. Chair, to bring up that the liquor board and the zoning board have completely different standards for whether something is, in our case, it's active and continuous operation. In the liquor board's case, it's open and operating. So they consider if you unlock the door and are there prepared to buy a drink, or sorry, to sell a drink to someone who comes in the door, that is open and operating, which they have a right to define their own standards however they want. But the zoning board standard is active and continuous operation. And if the previous owner, the heirs of Ray, who say that they were open at some time, hypothetically that's what we have been led to believe, if they did not sell a single drink or food item for 12 consecutive months, can the board really say that they were in active and continuous use? Active meaning they're active in their business. A business of a tavern is selling alcohol. Can you be an active tavern and not sell alcohol? And continuous meaning that it's regular business uninterrupted. Even if they came in every 3 months, well, first of all, they haven't sold anything, but even if they did sporadically, that's not continuous use. So it has to be active and continuous use. We've shown that for 12 consecutive months after the licensee died, there was not a single sale. There were, it seems that in one of those months they did purchase alcohol for the business, but they did not sell any of that alcohol. They didn't pay any sales tax. So just under the plain language of the statute, they cannot be said to be actively or continuously in operation. And the code specifically says that casual and temporary uses of the land do not establish a nonconforming use. So for the tavern use, I think it's clear that this use has been lost. As far as the neighborhood commercial use goes, there's been no evidence presented to show that this building was originally constructed for non-residential uses, and that is a prerequisite to using neighborhood commercial as an option. So we don't have a lot of information about when this building was built and what it was used for, but the information that Ms. Gregory found when she did some research seems to suggest that it was built as a residence. There's nothing architecturally about that building that makes it look like a commercial property necessarily. It's pretty nondescript, little box of a building. But I think it's on the applicant for this use to show that it was built for a non-residential purpose. We can't just assume that it was because it's been a tavern since the 40s when it was built in the 20s. And as
she said that she went to where again?
The Dundalk-Patapsco Neck Historical Society.
Okay, and where is that located?
It's at 4 Center Place.
Okay, and what material did you review?
There's actually an old deed of the property at the Historical Society that showed that Mr. Frank had actually bought 6504. and also that he had bought 6,500 and was selling, no, I'm sorry, that he was selling 6,500 in the 40s. And then there was an old article about the candy shop, that he wanted to open it as a candy shop, so he moved his family to 6504.
Okay, an old article in what publication?
It didn't state because it was only a clip out, so somebody cut it out of a newspaper and stuck it in the folder. So I do not know what publication it was in, sir.
Okay. Did you make any copies of anything that you saw?
I did not, but they are at the Historical Society for review.
Okay, and where is that located?
4 Center Place, Dundalk, Maryland, 21222.
This property is located very close to the,
Yes.
to the county line. So just to talk briefly about the expansion for the neighborhood neighborhood restaurant use, I wanted to cite, first of all, that neighborhood commercial, it says in section 14-328, is limited to the reuse of existing buildings. So that inherently excuse me, implies that the building cannot be expanded because it's limited to the reuse of existing buildings. And also, I think Mr. Hurdle slightly misstated the planning department's conclusion because he was talking, planning department was talking not about non-conforming uses, but about non-conforming structures. The structure itself is non-conforming, and therefore, under section 18-403, cannot be expanded. Just completely separately of the neighborhood commercial use. Under that section it says, a nonconforming structure may not be expanded if the expansion would in any way create a new nonconformity, increase the degree of any nonconformity, or increase the bulk of the structure. And obviously to add a kitchen onto the back of this property would increase the bulk of the structure. Mr. Hurdle gave a couple of examples of cases in which neighborhood restaurants were allowed to expand under the new section of the code. The first example doesn't, it still fits under the definition. So the first example was expanding from the first floor to the second floor. Under the definition it says limited to the reuse of existing buildings. So expanding the use from one floor to another is reusing the existing building. That seems fine. The second example is expanding to a second building, which apparently was denied. I don't know this case, but that again would fall under this description of neighborhood commercial, limited to the reuse of existing buildings. So you can't add an additional building when you're using the neighborhood commercial section of the code. And that would essentially be my case in this issue, on this case.
So the owner died, I believe someone said in November of 15, is that correct?
Yes.
And do we know, was there an estate opened? Do we know when if there was a personal representative appointed, when that personal representative had the authority to sell the building?
So from this is just going off of what I've seen in the liquor board file, so it could, I don't have it right in front of me, but my memory says that a personal representative was appointed in April of 2016, and that was filed with the liquor board. Once that is filed with the liquor board, then they have 18 months to sell the license. I know this is not the liquor board. So I believe it was, she filed, the daughter of Ray filed about 5 months or so after he died.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, that's just my recollection.
Anything further?
No, that is it. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Hurdle?
To address the active and continuous, Ms. Witt described active and continuous and defined active as a situation where people are making regular sales. I think that in the business world, some businesses lose money every quarter, and they're still businesses, they're still active, they're still open. There is the possibility in this situation that this owner opened for business, didn't attempt to make sales, or did make an attempt and didn't have any customers. We have no information at this point that there was an attempt by Ms. Gregory to call, to verify in any capacity besides going over the door occasionally to verify whether they were open. With regards to continuous, Ms. Witt indicated that it had to be regular. If it was the second Saturday of every month, that would be regular. It would not be casual, it would not be temporary, it would be every other Saturday. Maybe that's part of the business plan. That's not the situation that we're here. The testimony is that the owner opened the business regularly on 1 or 2 days a month. There's certainly evidence that indicates that there was no sales. It doesn't necessarily mean that the business wasn't open. It just means that it wasn't a good business. Ms. Gregory indicates that she found this research that it was a house. The evidence that she has reviewed is that there was a deed at 6500, there was a deed at 6504, and that there was an article about a candy shop, but to my knowledge, there was no testimony based on the information that she read at this historical society that there was ever someone who lived in 6500. She seems to indicate that there was, but this article doesn't indicate that, and the deed doesn't reflect the use. The gentleman owned both properties. One of them was a candy shop. Mr. French from planning indicated that the research that planning had done indicated it was always a commercial space. The building doesn't have windows until my client put them in, based on the pictures that have been submitted into evidence, which is the only document that was submitted into evidence today, were the photos that I submitted. And again, the building has a front door and some kind of back emergency exit. They've since put windows in. If it was a house, where'd the windows go? As a commercial property with a concern for robbery and a tunnel that was built, it makes sense that this was a candy shop since day one. There's nobody here with firsthand knowledge, and the best person who would be able to know that would be the planning department, and their knowledge is this has been a commercial structure. My client has indicated through testimony today that to their knowledge it was always open and operating as a tavern. We would hope to continue operating as a tavern. If we were not allowed to continue as a tavern, we would certainly like to expand to a full commercial kitchen in the space and have more seating. That would be the purpose of having the expansion, would be to have more seats in the space. If we would not be allowed to expand the kitchen, we would still like to operate as a restaurant. We would take up a corner of the space, as my client indicated, put a small commercial kitchen in. Certainly seating would be more limited than we'd like. That may be beneficial for the neighbors given their parking concerns. And we would operate as a restaurant, selling more than 50% food, and we would sell alcohol using the existing tavern license, which would operate under the restrictions of a restaurant, given the restaurant use. The restaurant use was recommended for approval by planning without the expansion, and that's what we would certainly hope as our kind of last resort option in this situation at this property at 6500 St. Helena.
Anything further?
No.
Okay. Thank you both.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Yes.
We got a question from the applicant. This is not your case, folks. This is a prior case.
Yes.
Stay on the record for 1 second, if you don't mind, Bryson. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. For 2018-87, it is 1607 Lawrence Street. The applicant had a question for the board. I wasn't sure if the board wanted to reopen that case briefly or not. And that's 2018-87.
Okay, sure. Recalling 2018-87, 1607 Lawrence Street and 1609 Lawrence Street, Sue Ali.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, ma'am. You can bend down one of those microphones there. Yeah, they move.
Thank you, sir. Give me opportunity. I wasn't misunderstood. I thought I read this paper before I thought this already result. That's why I thought I don't have no chance to get any to this case. But I just hear about the other people can explain their situation. So that's why I might to have some chance. Yes. Yeah, I bought this property about 2 months ago. I think we can make it easier to work because the space is going up, down, and down. Spaceman is very heavy to carry for the the beer. So maybe I can buy that property, so we can go using the storage. That's why I bought that property from the city. Then I just put an application for the zoning department for the consolidation. But they say, okay, so I just using about the $2,000 for the making drawing, the picture. But so I didn't know that really, I didn't expecting really this kind of disapprove. So I don't know how I can. So that's the
Okay.
process.
So this was property that you had purchased from the city that had been, I guess, vacant for a while?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I'll say that it's not infrequent that we've had people in your situation who have gone into come forward to purchase vacant property. And typically in that circumstance, what happens is that they look to make a use of the vacant property that they are not able to use. So, you know, they'll buy a vacant property thinking that it's like a multifamily property, like an apartment building. And then they'll find out after they've purchased it that the authority or the ability to use the property for multifamily has lapsed because of non-use or non-operation of the property, et cetera. Your case is a little bit different, though, because really the issue is less with the property that you acquired and more so an issue with the use of the property that you have. And the property that you have is, I guess, a tavern use, and you're looking to acquire the vacant adjacent property and then use it for storage for the tavern property that you have. And the issue is that your tavern can't be expanded because it's a non-conforming use. There's a little bit of that in that last case. So in acquiring and trying to consolidate the adjacent property with your own, you would then be increasing or making, you'd make your own, or the existing non-conforming use, that is the tavern use, you'd be making that bigger. And that's authority that the board doesn't have to authorize that. And so that's really what the issue is. Now, that's not to say that you can't make a use, some other use of the vacant property that you acquired. It just means that you can't expand your tavern use. So what you probably would want to do is try to come up with possible uses for that adjacent property. And if you would like, Mr. French, is there a neighborhood planner that you could recommend?
Yeah, it would be Mr. Chad Hayes, who is our West District Community Planner, would be the person you would want to talk with in our office.
Okay. Do you have pen and paper? If you need a pen, I've got it here.
We'll give it to you.
Okay, all right. I would say yes. I would contact the community planner, and they would probably gladly walk you through the list of potential uses you could make of the property that wouldn't run afoul of the issue that you have now. Again, you know, it's not that you're actually in a better situation than most in your circumstance that we encounter. As I said, most people, when they come to us in the situation that you have, they come in, they've purchased a property thinking that they're going to be able to use it for whatever the then existing use of that property that they purchased was, and that they would, and they don't find that out until after they've expended a lot of money on acquiring it and improving the property, et cetera, and then they find out, oh yeah, I just bought this 2-unit apartment building and now I find out I can't use it for that. You're not in that place, which is good. But what you do need to do is figure out what uses you can make of the property. So if you would like, we can postpone your case and you can reschedule it for another time for when you're ready to come forward with a plan. Or if you would like, you could also dismiss your case on your own or withdraw it. And then you'd be free to refile your case whenever you would be ready to go forward. I think probably it would be more appropriate to withdraw your case if that's what you were looking to do, of those two options, that is, because if you postponed it, you'd be really limited in what you would be able to propose when you came back to the board, because you already posted the property, you gave notice of one thing, and then you can't postpone it, and then come up with a wholly different plan. So you can either withdraw your case right now, you can postpone it and maybe withdraw it later, you can postpone it and decide to go forward. Really, sort of the choice how to proceed is yours, or you can keep it as is.
So which one is better, sir?
We can't tell you.
Okay, so maybe I don't have no chance to.
I would say that your ability to go forward with your existing plan is not very good, and that of the available options, probably the one that maybe leaves you with the most options going forward would maybe be to postpone it for right now, and then after you speak with the community planner and you can come up with some ideas, you can make the decision at that time as to whether or not you want to postpone, whether or not you want to withdraw your appeal and refile a new one, or if you want to try to go forward on your existing appeal at that time. So postponing probably leaves you more options for down the road.
Oh, I see. Okay, I have one more question. I know that is a different question, but I have that occasion on the bar I'm learning, but I'm really afraid for the zoning department, and then Baltimore City hasn't changed a lot of things. I just bought about 2 years ago that the business, but that is going to be safe or not safe, because that thing's my question too. So
okay.
I understand this is not really for this, but.
Okay, so for today, would you like to postpone your case? Would you like to withdraw it? Would you like to have us go forward and consider
I will have a chance to postpone.
Okay.
Please, sir. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
So then we will, 2018-87, 1607 Lawrence Street and 1609 Lawrence Street is postponed. Okay?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care, ma'am. All right, and with that, we are off the record. All right.